Howdy ho guys, and welcome back to the Virgin Gin Vlog. Alright, how you doing? Hope you're well. I'm gonna do my best to not get heat stroke again like last time, because it's kind of hot today randomly. Heat wave. It's not supposed to be happening right now, but anyway, bit of an unexpectedly hot day today. But anyway, kind of what my kind of bumbling intro belies in this entry is actually I want to talk about something that's actually kind of a bit more how should I say, a bit darker. I want to talk about something that's a bit darker than what I usually talk about. I occasionally talk about dark things, and as is customary for me when I do darker entries, let's say, I like to give my disclaimer at the beginning of my video so that you kind of know what you're getting into when you're watching the video. Of course, you've already seen a video title, so you know what this entry is about. I want to talk about evil, essentially, in this entry, alright? And it's like evil in a very loose sense, but like what I'm going to talk about in this entry can be loosely kind of put into this label of evil, right? What is evil? Who is evil? Like, what do we do about people who are evil? How do we protect ourselves against evil? And then like down that rabbit hole, right? So, and as such, I just want to say before I get into this entry, right, that this is, like all of my other entries, just a massive, if you want, mental masturbation session on my part, right? I think about these things and I kind of give my distillations of, those kind of thought explorations in these vlog entries, right? So even though what I'm about to talk about is kind of dark and maybe triggering in as such, right? Let's say that if you watch this video expecting to kind of be lifted and inspired, you may be in for a nasty surprise. However, if you stick to the end of this, then I'm going to bring it around to how we can then move past, all of the triggers and all of the negativity that I'm going to expose in this entry. But so I thought I'd just give a bit of a warning as usual, right? This entry, by and large, is not an entry that's really kind of like sunshine and rainbows and like hey, keep going, right? It is quite dark what I'm about to talk about, so I just want to let you know. But like by the end of the entry, I will attempt to kind of like come full circle and talk about okay, how do we then deal with all of this darkness that I've brought up in this entry, right? So okay, so in this entry, like I said, I want to talk about evil, like I said, right? And what do I mean by this, right? Sometimes when we're going along our journey, we kind of have thoughts of, let's say, not the most positive or optimistic nature, and sometimes we kind of ruminate on those thoughts, and they can really not just kind of put us into like a bad mood or like kind of make us feel inferior and just bad about ourselves, right? Just kind of like destroy like our, let's say, positive self-image. But they can also kind of linger around and really kind of threaten kind of the whole, let's say, substrate of our our beings, in terms of like, what's the point of trying to be a good person, right? Is really what it is, right? That question kind of comes up from time to time. It's like, shit happens to you, and, you kind of ruminate over the kind of negative feelings that come out of that. It could be like a wrongdoing that someone did to you, or you did to someone else, you become privy to some kind of, let's say, catastrophic or tragic, or dare I say malevolent event or act, and you try to come to terms with it, and you ultimately come at a certain point to the question of, so what's the point, right? I'm trying to be a good person, right? But there are just so many things that threaten that, and it's like, at the end of it, is what I'm doing even going to be worth it? Is it even going to leave it, like, why am I doing this? Sure, like, I'm a light worker type, right? I want to make stuff that has positive impact on people, right? I know that pain exists, but like, ultimately, like, I made a commitment to myself to, like, to always try to be a good person. But, sometimes there are just, you can't help but feel like what you're doing is ultimately pointless, right? And yeah, and basically you start kind of just really questioning what the point of you even trying in life is, right? If, like, you can even be a good person if you try, right? Because, it's just like, you see so much shit, not only in the world, but also in yourself, that is just so appalling. Just like the potential of others to commit, let's say, not very flavorsome, if that's a weird, cute little way of euphemizing it. But like, like, to do basically evil things to you, and even more scarily, for you to do evil things to other people, right? It is really a very, 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 very threatening thought to have, right? But like, we have these thoughts, if we're honest, right? To be honest, this is just one of many things that you can think, right? It's like, as much as I personally would like to believe that you can, if you're open and authentic and honest enough with yourself and subsequently to other people, that like, anything can be communicated, right? And it's like, there is hope towards that, right? There is hope that, like, if you are just open enough, even with like your darkest thoughts, like, you want to do harm to people sometimes because they hurt you, and like, and it's this painful thing, right? And it's not that you necessarily want to commit mass genocide or something, or even homicide, but like, or even be mean to people specifically, but like, you just kind of dislike people sometimes. You kind of hate people. And it just so happens that sometimes you hate a certain person, but like, you think that, well, in your good faith, in your own kind of journey of like trying to discover the way forwards in this mess of chaos of life, right? You're trying to be a good person and you're committing yourself to that. Like, you believe that if you are honest and vulnerable enough at any level, you can communicate to other people and they to you in such a way that allows you to be compassionate about one another and for everything to kind of resolve, right? And yeah, like I believe that. I really do. But you know what? Sometimes the way the actual reality that observe in others and myself and that kind of exchange of, let's say, information between people, there are, what I observe, and this is just me being completely objective, is like some things just are not said by people for whatever reason, right? And my suspicion is that it's just they're too dark. You know, they're too dark to talk about. You know, or like it's like the ribbon on like Pandora's box, if you will, right? It's like there's too many things. Sometimes there's too many things. There's too many variables, right? You know, and like, you know, in that kind of like transcendent kind of a mindset that you're in when you're thinking in terms of like, you know, I want to be a good person ultimately, right? And I want to do the right thing. Like, the reality is that like the relationships you're in have like many variables, and sometimes there are certain things that if you talk about them, they kind of disrupt those variables, right? You know, a good example of this is like, you know, people you do business with, right? And it's not necessarily like a partner per se. It could be like, you know, some like a fan of yours. It could be like someone that you know that like, you know, it's like a reciprocal relationship. You know, you're not exactly deep friends necessarily, but you like each other and like you kind of scratch each other's backs, right? And like as much as you would like to be fully transparent with them, like there is just certain things, like certain really, really like deep things that you cannot discuss with people, right? And then when you really think about it, you know, it's a lot of these things aren't talked about, you know, and yeah, and but we're all aware of them, you know, and they all kind of tie into like, you know, the kind of more chaotic and violent side of human nature, you know, the side of human nature that's fickle, really fickle, petty, opportunistic, treacherous, right? You know, it's like, will people betray you? Will you betray other people, right? You know, is the love that you're focused on bringing out into the world, is that not ultimately a manipulation tactic, right? Things like this, right? Or like, if it weren't for certain things, like, you know, if you have a following, for example, would people still find you a valuable person? You know, or is it that like really the, you know, the uncomfortable black truth is that like, you know, most people just like you because what you offer them, what you have in terms of status, right? You know, and it goes deeper than that, and it's just like, you know, do you love people, you know? And what happens when you don't love people, right? Does it mean like everything that you set up with them collapses, right? Because it's like when you say to someone that you don't like them, that you even hate them sometimes because of what a reason. It could be incompatibility. It could be like other things that could be resolved. But it's like, but there's the relationship, and there's all of the arrangements in that relationship, like, you know, like what you do for them and what they do for you, right? The way that other people perceive your relationship, like other people's relationships to you and the other person, and how they affect your relationship with each other. It's just like there's so many variables that like kind of threaten to kind of be destroyed if you talk too candidly about what it is that you want to talk about. And like, you know, the most frustrating thing, I'm sure you know this, right? It's like sometimes the things that plague us the most, the thoughts and the feelings that really hurt us the most, that are the heaviest to bear, right? They're the ones we can't talk about, right? They're the ones we can't talk about, and it sucks, right? And like this whole like how we, you know, the kind of like the threat of like us hurting each other type of a thing. That's one of them, right? And you know, like I say, right, I'm a believer that it's better to talk about these things than not. However, I'm also not going to say that like I'm the person who is like, oh, really going to openly talk about this to everyone. It's like, no, right? You know, I'm a hypocrite in that way, right? You know, it's like, or rather like there's a gap between like who I am and what I actually do, right, versus like who I actually want to become, right? Because, and it's like, I don't know, if I were to take a guess, I'm sure that this is pretty much most people, if not everyone, right? You know, in my estimation, right, this is only my estimation, but like, for someone to be like, someone who is super transparent, is someone who is basically enlightened, right? And I doubt that many of us walking around in society, most of us, obviously you watching this, right, and myself and everyone else who's on a journey of this type spiritual, like we're trying to become enlightened, we're trying to become good people, but like it's hard, man. If you live in the modern world, it's fucking hard, right? It's not like, it's just, in theory, it sounds easy, particularly if we're like, yeah, we should be authentic. Authenticity, that word just rolls off the tongue so easily, right? And it's so like inspiring. And it seems like such an attractive, like all-encompassing solution. And to some degree, it's what is needed to actually get to where we want to get to. To actually do it, like, most of us don't realize just how difficult that's going to be until we actually come up to the parts of to those to those scenarios and those situations where things like this actually arise, and we're like, oh fuck, this shit is not a joke, right? But anyway, one person that I've mentioned before and that I admire quite a bit is a fellow by the name of Dr. Jordan Peterson, right? I've mentioned him. I'm sure, like, it's like, everyone knows who he is, right? It's like he's been on news, he's like all over the internet, on YouTube, he's going all across the world doing tours and like seminars and shit like that, right? So like, yeah, anyone who's anyone has heard of him, right? If you haven't heard of him, it's probably because you're in a cave or something, right? I don't know, you're just not interested in personal developments and improving yourself, really. Because if you are, then you've heard of him, right? And obviously if you haven't heard of him, maybe it's just because you haven't heard of him, but he's a guy who is just fearless, or at least like one of the most fearless that I've seen, like aside from people like Teal Swan, right? Kind of just like coming out and saying things that need to be said, right? And I'll be honest, some of those things are kind of triggering, right? Maybe like this entry is to you, right? But even I try to like kind of like sugarcoat things a bit, but like he's just like bleh, right? Like Teal, right? It's just like blah. This is the way it is, and like it's just like oh, right, and one of the things he talks about is the human capacity for malevolence, right? He himself personally says that he's really, really interested in this kind of thing, right? He studied like intensively like the kind of the conditions of Auschwitz, the German concentration camps, Soviet Russia and the gulags and like communist China and things like that. And he really delved into like not only the circumstances that the people faced, but also like the mentality, because he's a professor of psychology. He really dived into like the the mindset of these people, but the tyrants, the dictators, to see what would, and not just the tyrants, but also the people who worked under these tyrants, like for example the guards in the concentration camps, right? And he really dived into those and tried to understand them, and in so doing he realized that like that same seed for malevolence lies in himself, right? And so yeah, again, very roundabout way of kind of introducing this topic, but like, yeah, when you're a victim of pain, right, it's very unpleasant, right? And like most people kind of like react to pain that they receive from other people, right? In how would you say, in kind, right? Like they kind of take revenge, they lash out. And in some ways, that's kind of the most primal way of kind of reacting to pain, right? And as such, in some ways, it's kind of the most honest. Like, it's the least tainted by like kind of ideology, let's say, right? But it has its downsides, right? And like, but that's how the majority of people react when they're in pain. It's like they identify who is the origin of that pain, right? Someone screwed them over, or like someone said something unsavory about them, or like someone threatened them, or like lied to them, or betrayed them, right? And they take revenge, right? In some way. And that's one way, right? But like for people who are kind of who want to understand more deeply the kind of condition of pain and how it transfers from one person to the next, aka more sensitive people or people who think a bit more deeply, right? They go into the pain and they try and understand why the pain exists in the first place, right? So like they kind of take it away a bit from like the person hurt me to like, okay, they hurt me, but like why is pain such a deeply rooted, like why does it have such an effect on me, right? And like why, and then you look at different scenarios, and you look at how the difference, in terms of like how they affect you, right? Excuse me. Pesky phone calls from salespeople. But like, yeah, and you go down that route, and you realize, like Jordan Peterson, that it's something like a kind of a wave, like a pattern, a cycle, if you will, of pain that transfers from person to person, from like from society, from community to community, right? Like all of these conflicts, they're all a result of like this kind of exchange of pain that goes on between human beings, right? And so like in realizing that, you realize your own capacity to hurt other people, right? But like you can actually go a step deeper than that, right? And you try and think, okay, right, okay, so in response to that, right, you try to become a good person, right? So along the journey, you recognize that pain is like a condition that kind of has a momentum behind it that transfers between different demographics of people, right? And or indeed between individual people, right? And as such, pain itself is something that has kind of almost an existence of its own, right? It's something that you can isolate apart from like people who hurt people, and it's like its own thing itself, right? So in response to that, you're like, no, I don't want my life to be ruled by pain. I want to live my life in such a way that minimalizes pain as much as possible. So I want to dedicate myself to being a good person, right? And this is what we as sensitives and people who are interested in personal development and spirituality are into, right? We want to become better people, right? But as you go along, right? As you go along, and let's say you're on the journey, like I am, right? You're many years into the journey, and you understand a lot, and you've seen some stuff, and like every single time that pain comes up, you try to understand it, you take the lessons from it, right? And the next time you meet it, you have a different type of an understanding. Your awareness of pain and what it means to you and how you respond in pain has expanded, right? So like this happens over and over again, right? And like you're on this heroic crusade. You're like, I'm not going to be a victim of pain. I want to deliver myself and other people from pain. I want to be a good person. I want to teach people how to deliver themselves from pain, right? I want them to like learn what I've learned about focusing on the right things and like, understanding pain so that you can distance yourself from it, so you see what it is, and then choosing something that is more let's say, compassionate towards ourselves and other people, right? So you do that, but then you hit an interesting point, right? Which is where you realize, or you have like the first experience of like you pushing for something that you want in your own life, and for that to kind of hurt someone else, right? You know, and that's a very sobering kind of an experience, right? But you keep going, right? You keep going, and like, you know, because you're still on that momentum, that track of thinking like, you know, I'm going to keep pushing for what I believe in, right? I want to be a good person, right? But, you know, ultimately you come back to this, and like it happens again and it happens again, and you think, and it's like, is it possible that what I'm doing, despite my best efforts at trying to be the best person I can be, to minimize the amount of suffering on the planet, and to spread high vibration and awareness as much as I can, could it be that my decision to do that, right, and my endeavoring towards doing that is still hurting people? And then you realize that pain is a kind of a condition, an entity, if you will, that moves from one person to the other, or indeed between groups of people to another group of people, right? And it is something that basically brings about suffering, right, in life, you know. And as such, we're almost, you know, like Jordan Peterson says, like we're a slave to pain. Like pain is our master, right? Because pain is something that we cannot escape, right? And it causes us to have to act in response to that pain, right? You know, and so like, you know, you recognize what it is, right? And so like you try your best to consciously design your life and to focus energetically on things that you believe and constantly update on as being things that are, you know, good, let's say, for people. But as you do that, right? As you do what you believe is good for yourself and other people, right? That minimalizes pain. You realize, because experiences come up where like you see how your actions still bring pain to people, right? And like the thing is, it may not be in the, like, I'm making it sound like, you know, like you do what you do to people, like to people, and like the thing is, it can do that, right? It's like, I'll give you some examples, right? You know, you spread your message to people of being like happy, you know, and doing whatever it is that you want, right? And you know, and there's someone watching on like the other side of the world who like is missing a limb or has some kind of crippling disability, and they see this and it hurts them because like that, you know, they don't have the same capability as you, right? Or like, yeah, you know, someone sees it and like it just emphasizes how shitty their situation is compared to yours, let's say, right? It like, you know, like let's say that you build a following and people like, and like, you know, people love you, but then like some of the people, you know, followed your advice and they were put in like an even worse situation than they are now, right? And like maybe they take some drastic, which is my euphemism for it, right? Drastic measures, right? Because they have nothing else to live for, right? And it's like, you know, or like some of the people like they're following under you, and they want you to help them, but you can't help them because helping them means that you have to put down what you're doing for a second in order to help them, right? You know, and it's like none of these examples are like are like life and death, right? Pick one or the other. But like, there will be times when you realize that, what you're doing is hurtful to other people, even when you don't intend for them to be, right? So, yeah, like, like your family, for example, maybe like they have to sacrifice many things in order for you to follow your dreams, right? That's certainly true in my case, right? You know, so and it's like, yeah, sure, like if I succeed, for example, it's going to pay off, but like, what if I don't succeed, right? It's a possibility, you know. But anyway, so the thing I realized amongst all of this is that like you can think that like you're going to keep going on this path of like becoming a better person, and the thing is it's absolutely the right thing you should do, right? But like the thing you will realize is that you going on this journey will never stop your capacity to hurt other people, right? AKA, you can hurt people unintentionally, right? And I've known this before. I've known it, right? It's something that like I think everyone intuitively knows, because it's such a fundamental part of existence, like this, like being like, let's say, in joy and being in pain, right? Being in love and being in pain. It's such a fundamental like part of living that I think even if you have never realized the full extent of it, you still kind of intuitively understand that, like, children know this, right? Children get punished all the time for doing shitty things, basically, right? For doing stupid things, even if they did not intend to do it, right? And like that in itself is another discussion, right? Because that leads to resentment, or it leads to like low self-esteem, and all of this other stuff, right? But like children know this, right? And if children know this, we all know this, right? It's like we have all been in situations where something happens, right? And it could be a mistake, it could be an accident, but like, but it's the fault is still with us, right? Or even though we were not intending to do it, right? As an example, like I do like a side job where I deliver food, right? Sometimes something happens, like the food spills or something, and it's like, I don't know, like because the bag was soaked through, right? This happened recently to me. Like the bag soaked through, and I handed it to the customer. Like the food just fell out of it. The bag it just broke, right? And it's like, whose fault is that, right? Obviously I feel bad about it, and it's like, I don't know. Like I've been lucky in that, like most people are kind of, they give me the benefit of the doubt because like, well, it was in your bag, you didn't know it was soaked through, blah blah. But that's an example of how like sometimes stuff can happen and it hurts other people. Or like you get hurt, but like it's obvious that the other person did not intend to do it, right? And it's like, not only is that the case, right? But like sometimes you can do something in a focused way where it isn't an accident. You're doing it on purpose, and it still hurts people, right? Because it wasn't what they needed to hear. It invalidated their circumstances, right? It is part of something that hurt them in the past, because in the past it existed in a form that was overly excessive. So, for example, if you're into inspiration, if you're into inspiring people, right? If you're into inspiring people, but like someone watches your video who like used to have a friend or a family member who would always be nice to them and be like, you're the best, I love you, and would always like sugarcoat them with stuff. But then when it came down to it, like they were like alcoholic, right? They would disappear. Like they would not take responsibility for like you, right? As your guardian or as your friend, right? And they were just like a mess, right? And you struggle through your early life with this person and you love them, but like they just caused you so much pain, and they would always be nice to you, right? And it's like, so like when you see someone like me, right, being like, you can do it, you know, believe in yourself, you know, and I love you and stuff like that. It's like you might be like, it might dredge up that pain, right, of like, I don't trust people who say nice things to me because they'll always leave me in the end, right? As an example, right? So like, what, do you stop saying good stuff to people? Of course not, right? Of course not, right? That's your path. But it's like, you will come and up, you will meet these experiences where like, not only like are you doing something because you don't want to increase the pain in the world, right? But you're doing something that you consciously have outlined that is good for people, right? It's like, and it causes pain to someone. That's a tough one, right? Right, that's a tough one. So like, you can hurt people even when you intend to deliver them from pain, right? Do you want a better definition of irony, right? But it will happen, right? And I'll tell you why it happens, right? You can go a step beyond that, right? You can go a step beyond that. Because then it's like, okay, what about intention? Is intention important? And it's like, obviously intention is important, right? Does it matter whether I do this thing that's kind of whatever, right? Versus this thing that I truly believe is my path and my passion, and I truly believe will give the optimal amount of consciousness and value and joy to people, right? And help them with their own lives, right? Which do I choose? Obviously you choose the latter one, right? So like, but pain, you can still hurt people from that. So, you know, it's easy to get into a state where it's like, fuck it. Or like, you know, that's why you have those thoughts of like, what's the point, right? You know, you try your best and like shit still goes wrong and you still hurt people from it, right? Just by being alive, right? So obviously this goes beyond intention, right? This goes beyond intention. We now go into the realm of nature, you know. Violence is, to the average person, one of the most reprehensible and downright terrifying things that exists in our reality. Violence, malevolence even, right? Jordan Peterson defined malevolence as an intentional act of violence, right? You know. And like, intentional is even kind of not as specific as it could be, right? You know, because what if someone has no choice but to do something that might hurt people, right? For example, someone who has no money, right? Someone who has no love, no friendships, right? Someone who has no hope, right? You know? Yeah. Hope, I say, right? There's a game. It's called Danganronpa. I've mentioned it before, right? And it's a game about hope versus despair, right? It's a lot more than that. It's the story is like, usually it's a group of students who get together and they get forced into a game where they have to kill each other, and the last person, roughly speaking, alive, you know, is the winner, right? So it's kind of like films like Battle Royale, if you've seen that before, but like, you know, it's a visual novel Japanese game. But like, the central theme of it is hope versus despair, right? But yeah, like, despair is one of those things that causes us to, that could cause someone to commit an act of violence because they have no choice, right? Because in that state of deprivation, like, you telling them that everything's going to be okay if they just apply themselves, right? That message is not enough. If anything, it is a abject, like, mockery, if you will, or rather it can be construed that way, right, by them, of their situation, right? It's like I'm fucked as it is. You're telling me that like it's my fault now, that like I need to take responsibility for me, right? You know. So and it's like the world has these people, right? The world has these people, right? So what's going to happen when you come up to one of these people, right? What's going to happen? You know. What's going to happen is that you don't know, right? You certainly aren't going to be all buddy-buddy with them, right? You know? And it's like, yeah, like, it's not something that we like to think about. Again, it's one of these things that we don't like to talk about. What if you met a serial killer or someone who doesn't give a fuck about, like, about humanity, right? Are you willing to delve into the mindset of that person? People like Jordan Peterson and perhaps Teal Swan are, right? They're willing to do it, but are you willing to do it, right? And to then live with the consequences of knowing that like someone could be that focused on doing the exact opposite of what you're trying to do consciously, right? So it's like pain and violence will never go away because pain and violence is a part of our nature, right? And it's not just a part of our nature. It's a part of nature itself, right? Because nature is an ongoing process of creation and destruction, right? You know, it's something that lies behind even like consciousness, right? Even thoughts, right? It is a feature of nature, right? Is creation and destruction, right? So like, even if you make a commitment, right? I warned you guys, right? It's going to be a dark entry. Even though you can commit and you should commit, right, to being a good person and doing the right thing, right? You are still going to contribute to the pain in the world. Because why? Because destruction is a feature of nature. Right? When you move in any direction, it doesn't matter what direction, right? There will be a destructive consequence of your actions, right? Whether it be that other people are going to have to sacrifice for your dream, whether it be like you will disappoint some people, whether, you know, and betray what they expected from you, right? You know, whether it be like you succeeding in a certain way prevents other people from succeeding who could have equally like contributed value, right? As you do, right? It's like every single action that you take while you're alive has a creative component and a destructive component, right? So what, right? You know, and this is what I discovered. It's like, this is something that you will eventually, if you haven't already realized this, is something you will ultimately realize. Is like, I'm sure that you started this journey because like you were in pain, right? Because, you know, almost all of us, like I don't think there is a single person personally. There might be some people out there who have the luxury of doing this, but like I believe that like the true kind of commitment to awakening starts with pain. Like, I'm convinced that it always does, right? Certainly the case in my case, right? You know, I didn't get into this journey because like everything was going well for me. You know, I got into this journey because like everything in my life sucked, or rather, not everything, right? But like, I didn't see a future for myself, and I didn't understand like how I got into the situation I got into, right? So like, I wanted to know, right? And well, you know, and you go on this journey and you make the commitment to minimalizing pain as a light worker, right? But you will keep seeing situations where like what you do causes pain to people, even when you intend to do the exact opposite, right? And the reason for that is because Destrudo, right, which is the opposite of libido, right? And like most people, myself included, like think of those things as like as a kind of drive that happens, you know, in human beings, but also like in all of life, right? And it kind of is, but like it also points to like the fundamental, and by fundamental I mean fundamental, right? What are the fundamental laws of physics, right? The fundamental forces, the four fundamental forces of nature: gravity, electromagnetism. I'm pulling on my physics knowledge now, and the strong and weak nuclear forces, right? But like, what are those four forces predicated on, right? What happens in those four processes, just at different scales, right? Creation, the formation of order, and destruction, you know, the dissolution of order, right? Because energy, I'm busting out all the fucking tricks now. Energy, I believe this is a fundamental law of thermodynamics, right? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another, right? So every action has a component of creation and a component of destruction, right? So destruction, pain, right? Chaos, that is a fundamental part of nature, and therefore a fundamental part of you that you can never change. Feeling good yet? I knew this entry would make you feel good. Yeah. AKA, daily, you know, day-to-day translation, doesn't matter what you do, you will always hurt people. Right? You will always hurt people. And yeah, it's not the most fucking inspiring message. If anything, it's one of the most terrifying messages like in existence. This is why I warned you, right? You know, like maybe I should have given more warning. It's like maybe you don't care, right? Maybe you haven't reached the, you know, level where you've thought about this, but like if you have really experienced this, right, it is something that you really need to contend with, right? You can get over it, right? And you can, and like, you know, you don't think about it forever, right? I'm not like sat in bed every night going like, oh my god, everything I do causes pain to people. No, right? I have my own kind of defense mechanisms in place if you want to be, you know, mechanical about it, right? That I have in place that kind of keep me going, right? But another thing that I'm trying to say, which is possibly more positive, at least, you know, something that will kind of do damage control on this whole entry, is like, because it's something that is inevitable, right? You cannot expect yourself to be fully responsible for it, right? If anything, if you then subsequently take responsibility for your own life and continue to go on that journey that you have highlighted for yourself as being the ultimate good that you could do, you know, or that at least that you can envisage now, right? Then that is the ultimate virtue, in my opinion, right? And I'm sure someone like Jordan Peterson will agree with me. It's his words, right? It's like the way that you make life meaningful, right? And I think I'm going to repeat this in the next entry. Like the next entry, I'm going to talk about something similar as well, but it's not going to be quite as dark, right? But like, he says, in order to make your life meaningful, right? Because we all want meaning, we all want significance, right? But like meaning and significance is only like, because we imagine meaning and significance meaning like happiness, right? Once I have meaning in my life, I'll be happiness. But no, meaning is part happiness, but it's also part being comfortable and being able to accept the inevitable pain that you will receive from the world and that you will contribute to the world. A path that is worth living is a path that makes all of that bearable, makes it, you know, fair, right? Okay, fair enough, right? You know, this pain thing is omnipresent. Not only that, we have no we have no hope to be free from it. Even when we intend to help others, we can end up hurting them inadvertently. Right? Even when we intend, right? Like I said, you want a better definition of irony, right? Because that's fucking ironic, right? But again, but like being ironic once again, I suppose, right? Given such an idea, right? That like it doesn't matter what the fuck you do, you're still gonna hurt people and they're gonna hurt you, right? Pick something. That thing that you've already picked, like the thing that you love, the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you know is gonna bring joy to not only yourself but to other people, right? Do that. Do that. Because if you do that, you will be able to at least lead an existence, right? Where the pain that is going to always be there is justified. Right? And you can teach other people to do that. You know? And guess what? Like, even in spite of that message, there will always be people who will never be able to do that, right? There are just some people who will always be a slave to chaos, right? They will never be able to go through that journey of discovering something, realizing that like it's ironic, right? But then flipping that irony on its head and going and keeping going regardless, right? Because it's like, yeah, that's the kind of beauty and the absolute ugliness of life, is that like there is no ultimate point, right? And that's actually something related to my next entry that I'm going to talk about, right? This whole like nihilism thing, right? There is no ultimate point, right? Life is like a sandbox game, and you can do whatever it is that you want. And like people look, including me, including everyone, right? People look for an ultimate reason for why they're doing what they're doing, or like they look for like a sign, a northern star, right? And like that thing does exist, but it is one of many northern stars, right? Because there is no ultimate, like, this is the best thing for you and this is the worst thing for you. It's like there are some things that are terrible for you, but there are also a lot of things that are good for you. And even the things that are terrible for you are equally viable, right? You know, aka like there is an equal potential for you to engage in those things, like as than you are the good things, right? So it's your choice, right? Is you know, and like I've chosen for myself, right? And it's yeah, it's like people, you know, it's like yeah, I know the feeling, man. I'm like, I wish that there was a sign from God telling me that, you know, you have my approval, my son, to do this music thing and to do this talking to a camera to people, so that they can hear your weird, you know, harebrained ideas, right? You know, like, you are doing the right thing, my son, keep going. You have God's seal of approval. It's like, no, there is no such thing, right? That's the other thing that people struggle with, right? You know, you know, I'm sure you don't, like, most likely not you watching this, right? Because if you're watching this, you're on some kind of journey. But most people, like, they don't, like, that kind of sense of uncertainty, like, just terrifies them, right? So they inevitably end up doing like the safe thing, right? You know, so that's their thing, security, right? But like for you and me, it's about inspiration, right? So yeah, that's it. You know, that's it, man. Like, damn, what a weird wimpy end to this entry. Like, yeah. So to wrap this all up, I suppose it's like, okay, you know, that's what I realized is like, you know, not only is pain something that exists, right? But pain is also something that persists through your focused and sacrificial, because it is sacrificial, right? You know, when you choose to go down a path, it's a sacrificial path because you sacrifice many other things for it, you know? You sacrifice friends, right? You sacrifice time that you could be spent doing something else. You sacrifice on your physical appearance, potentially. Look at me, I mean, prime example. You sacrifice on a great number of things, right? Like if you're doing your own thing, you're certainly not like gonna be like, you know, the employee of the month, right? You're gonna be some weird black sheep, right? Some weird outcast, right? Doing your own little thing, right? And it's like, yeah, the choice is yours, and you know, if you've chosen it, then like keep going with it, right? Because hey, even though you know you have times when you're like, is this the right path for me? Here I am again, you know, entry number 1002. I'm here again. Once again, I'm questioning everything I'm doing, even though I've been through this 1001 times before, right? It's like you'll be there, you know, and yeah, like you know, as I was saying, like that could still be a source of pain for other people because pain, destruction, destrudo is a part and parcel of nature. It exists regardless of what you think because it's who you are, right? You know, you destroy and others destroy you, right? You know, most of the time it's like, you know, ego or something, you know, emotional destruction, but sometimes it's serious, right? And lives are involved, but like, hey, right? And it's like, I don't know. But like, one thing I will say is that like keep going on your journey, right? Because like like Jordan Peterson says, like I say, it's like, well, if pain is inevitable anyway, if destruction is inevitable anyway, yeah, feel that, you know, feel it once in a while, but then like dedicate yourself to putting your life in order, like Jordan Peterson says, like tidy your room, right? I tidy my room, right? I do, and it really helps, right? I do exercise, I eat well, I try to, right? And I do all of these things that I know are good for me. And then occasionally I'll indulge because hey, life is too short, right? If you want to know the reason why, like why I would say that, right? You know, it's like, oh, but I also indulge sometimes, right? I do, right? And the reason I'll link it at the end, but like it's the intro I did about productivity versus happiness, right? You need to balance those things, right? So you need to learn also to let go sometimes. Right. As long as like you don't fuck yourself over in the long run, you can cheat once in a while, right? To make like, but as long as it's you're cheating in a way that's actually resonant with you, and you're not doing it out of desperation, right? Because that or peer pressure, oh God forbid, right? But like, anyway, yeah, do that and dedicate yourself to something that justifies the pain. Like you can think, okay, I'm doing this and I love it, and even though like this might cause people pain, I know that it's going to cause a lot of people happiness. So cool. That's my message. I hope I hope it justified the dark entry, but you know, it's just something I thought about. Yeah. Destruction, violence, you know, it's such a terrible force, such a terrible thing in this reality, you know. When like people hurt you, you hurt people, you know. Yeah. Danger and like injury and you know, the human being is very frail. Frail, but also like, you know, like I said, a very animalistic animal, right? You know, and like I say, there are lots of dark sides to us that we don't like thinking about and we don't like discussing, but they're there. But like, and you have to live through those, and you have to accept yourself as this like sinful being, really, right? You know, the 7 deadly sins, they're all there. You know, see if I can remember them. Pride, vanity, gluttony, wrath, sloth. That's 5. The other 2. Did I say lust already? Lust, pride, lust, vanity, gluttony, sloth, wrath, and what was the other one? Damn it! I always struggle with this. Like it's okay. Pride, pride, lust, sloth, wrath, vanity, gluttony. Damn it! Which one am I missing, guys? Ah, damn it. Anyway, like I'm not gonna like kill you guys over this, right? But yeah, like you know, you're a sinful person. You're like, you know, you've had thoughts like, oh, like fuck it, I don't care about other people. I'm just gonna do what's like, you know, fuck it. Right? Why should I care? Right? You know, things like that. Yeah, but as long as you're on this path that you're on, right, it will at least give you the justification to keep going. Right? You know, and it's like, yeah, it's arbitrary, right? But it's your choice, so make the most of it. You know, commit yourself to it, and you'll do great things, for sure. Right? Just keep going. You know, obviously, if it's not the right path, that will also reveal itself in due time, right? Generally speaking, like, it has to be a path that, like, generally does create a lot of good, right? You know, and a path that's sustainable. If you want, again, another entry that speaks into this is like 5 signs you're on the right path, right? Which I'll also link in the end screen. But cool, I'm going to leave you guys because it's already been a long ass entry. I need to go as well. But yeah, I hope this was a useful entry for you guys, and yeah, I hope you're going along and, like, yeah, you know, keep going. So cool. Until next time, guys. Next time I'm going to talk about an equally deep topic, like I said, but it might not be as dark. But yeah, I hope you guys will check me out, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next entry. Until then, stay safe, stay you, stay inspired, and just keep going. Peace out, guys. I didn't die from heat stroke.